Hello everyone, welcome back to another Ableton tutorial. Lovely to have you here. Big shout out YouTube crew, big shout out Patreon crew. Right, let's get straight into it. I wanted to look at today ideas about patterns and how to level up the way that we're chopping samples to create patterns. Patterns are a huge thing that we look for when we listen to music. We look for harmonic patterns, rhythmic patterns, vocal patterns, all of these kind of things. And when we look for patterns, we try and predict what's going to happen next. And sometimes what happens meets our predictions. Sometimes it surprises our predictions. And it's in that either meeting or surprising that we find connection and engagement with the music, and we find our meaning and even our emotional connection to the music. So the way that we chop samples, thinking about patterns and creating variations on those patterns that will either then meet or not meet the expectations, creates that engagement, creates that excitement. Often when we're making music, we think about A and B sections, and the way that we shift patterns between A and B sections is all about that. It's all about creating or changing those expectations, changing that engagement. So I wanted to look today at how we can do that, chopping up samples, how we can make a rack that allows us to easily create these variations, to create these patterns and mutate these patterns, bring these patterns to life, leveling up our sample chopping. So I'm going to press stop on that thing. That was a rack that I have made. Patreon members will be able to download this entire rack. I'll do a little bit more of a walkthrough of it at the end of today. I'm going to mute that for now. I'm going to mute the drums. I had a little drums in there during the intro just because sometimes it's nice to have drums. I'm going to start with this. It's just a sort of let's turn this channel on. This is just a sort of modular vibey jam thing. When I'm jamming out in the evening, sometimes I record this stuff. It's useful to have for situations such as this. Sometimes I use it intact. Sometimes I do like what I'm going to do today with it. So we're going to start with that. Everybody can download that if you want to follow along today. Link is in the description below. Patreon and YouTube alike if you want to follow. And also if you want to follow along, 140 BPM. It's a Thursday afternoon. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that sample into a simpler. So instruments, simpler, new channel, and we're just going to drag that straight into there. Now we don't need that channel anymore. Okay, so I'm going to change a couple of things on the simpler. I'm going to change it to slice mode, and we're going to change this to gate instead of trigger. That means that the notes are only going to continue playing when the MIDI notes are being held down. I'm going to reduce the sensitivity so this spreads out a little bit more. Right, so now I've done a couple of videos on this before. So what happens is each of these slices is played by a different MIDI note: C1, C sharp 1, D1, D sharp 1, etc., all the way through the sample. We've looked at ways that we can use arpeggiators or sequencers to do that. Today I'm going to use just a MIDI clip. I'm going to make it 2 bars long. I'm going to get Ableton to write the notes for me. Why not? I'm a bit lazy today. So we're going to use Ableton's generate tool here over in the MIDI clips. So I have a 2-bar MIDI clip, and I have this generate tool here where I can choose a particular pattern, flat or up and down, and you can see Ableton's making some MIDI notes for me. We can change the sort of amount of notes in here by changing the tie isn't quite changing the amount of notes. If I turn the tie all the way down, we get that many notes. Then I can change the density, the amounts of notes here. But this is sort of also kind of changing the density because as you can see, it's making some of the notes longer. So I'm just going to press play on that and see what happens. And you can see it's slicing through this clip. We're going to turn the gain up a bit. There's some short ones in here. I'm going to delete these short ones. Nice, nice. Nice. Some more short ones in here. Let's just delete these now whilst I'm in here. How you chop the sample is going to, of course, greatly change the outcome of the whole situation. I'm just going to leave it at that because I'm showing you. Let's get rid of this one. Nice. Okay, so I'm already going to add an EQ and a limiter at the end of all of this because I like to change the way the sound is a little bit. Just take out some of that low end, some of that mud, and bring in a limiter because I don't want to blow up the world. So let's bring the ceiling down and the input gain. Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to look at some ways in which we can now change the way that this sample is being chopped, some of the things that we can do to vary it. I'm going to use some MIDI effects for that. The first thing I'm going to do is bring in a note length. Now I can really chop the sample super short. And you can hear that already. That's a nice variation. I'm going to bring in a pitch in here. Now this pitch is of course not changing the pitch of the sample. This is changing the pitch of the incoming MIDI notes, which of course is going to take the pattern that is being played and shift it up or down. So if I shift this up by 12 semitones. So now we have this same pattern, except it's playing different notes. It's playing different slices of the sample, and already that's a lovely way to vary this section, vary our outcomes as well. I'm also going to bring in a random in here, so that can bring it a little bit of variation into the patterns. It's essentially still playing the same underlying pattern, but it's every now and then it's playing a different note. And I'm also going to bring in a velocity in here because I want to randomize some velocity. Right, let's map some of these things. So I'm going to select all of these things, everything, Command G, turn it into a group. We're going to open up the macros here, and we're going to use all of the macros. I'm going to leave macro 1 free for now, but let's map some of these other things. So this note length, map to macro 2. That allows me to turn that device on and off. Nice. Of course, let's add the length here. MIDI length. The pitch, that's going to be really interesting. Map that to macro 4. Of course, I don't ever want it to go down here because no samples are going to get played by whatever note that is. And I don't want it to go all the way up here because no samples are all the way up there. So let's constrain that range. Let's go from 0 to 24. Nice. Okay, let's map this. Let's rename this. Lovely. Now let's make this, map to macro 6. Also map to macro 6. Also map to macro 6. And let's change some of those ranges because I want the output high to be 127. And I want that to go down to 64. I want that to be 64 as well. So now, I'm doing the wrong one. Yeah, we can see that as I turn it up, we get some random velocity. Lovely. I'm gonna add a reverb to the end of this whole thing because I think reverb sometimes sounds nice, doesn't it? Let's add a reverb. Let's use the hybrid reverb. And I'm going to set this up as kind of a send within the chain, which is something I often like to do. So I'm going to make this 100% wet. Going to add a utility in front of it. Going to group those two things. And I'm just going to map this utility to macro 1. And let's make that only go up to 0. Let's also add the decay, map to macro 2. And let's add a dry chain in here. Lovely. Let's map this to macro 7 of the whole thing, and map this to macro 8 of the whole thing. Now those are here. Lovely. Cool. Right, some things on the simpler that are going to be interesting to map. I think the volume to velocity is going to be really interesting. Let's map that to macro 9. Of course, the filter frequency. probably don't want it ever going all the way down. So where's my filter frequency gone? Filter frequency, low point of, yeah, somewhere around there. Right. Also the filter frequency volume. Yes, velocity to filter frequency. That's a nice thing. Right. What else might we want? Transpose, I think, yes. Let's add you to macro 12. And again, let's not get crazy with that. Where's the transpose gone? Transpose, yeah, maybe minus 24 to plus 24. Lovely. I think fade in, map to macro 13, fade out, map to macro 14. Let's open that filter up again. Right, and I think some tremolo. Yeah, let's add the LFO to the amplitude. Yeah, let's change that amount. Map to macro 15. Yes, this is tremolo. Lovely. And let's do a master volume at the end of all of this. I think this is our verb rack. Yeah, let's add a volume after the verb rack, so in here. So utility after the verb rack. And let's map you to macro 16. And again, let's constrain the range. As our gain, maybe to 5. Just in case we ever need a little bit more. Let's rename that. Okay. Let's color some of these. So let's color all the MIDI stuff white. Your MIDI, your MIDI, your MIDI, your MIDI, random velocity, reverb. Let's make that U. This is all stuff to do with the simpler settings. So these can all be this color. Volume out, you can be that color. Okay, now let's bring some velocity information into this clip. Again, I'm just going to use Ableton's tools. So this is going to be in transform. There's a little drop down menu here, arpeggiate, chop, connect, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to use the velocity shaper. Nice. So now we can use the velocity information. Yeah. And already now, we have so many interesting ways that we can vary things, create patterns, change the patterns, change people's expectations, engage with this. That's nice. Nice. So then what I tend to do is, of course, save macro variations. So now we hit this little camera here. Let's save that. Start, and then maybe a second version of that is a super staccato-y version. Save that as a new one. And then maybe we change the MIDI pattern. Yeah. And let's go back to this. Call that start 2. So we have the start. And then the only difference between start and start 2 is this MIDI transpose. So we're just playing different slices. Let's open that up so we can see what's happening. So you see, when I hit start, we're playing different slices. And just that, we're creating patterns, we're creating expectation, and then we're changing that we're changing that expectation. So that's essentially this rack. The one other thing I did with this one macro that I haven't used, I'm just going to press stop on that now, and and I'm going to come back to this rack that I started with. So you can hear different samples, and that was the only other thing I did. This sample, there's a little bit of post-processing, but so the way I did that was this rack here, the instrument rack. Instead of just having the one sample, I've got, I think, 46 samples. It goes up to 45, 0 to 45. And as you move through these samples, the sounds... The sounds stay quite similar. So it's got all kinds of different samples in. You can hear here a saxophone, and if we go to that actual simpler, we can see it in here. Sample of a saxophone. It was just some recordings, and so obviously, changing this MIDI transpose, it changes the pattern that's being played. So we're able to create all these variations on this pattern really quickly, easily, and simply. So that's the idea. Of course, you could use whatever samples you like. I showed you demonstrating using a sort of synthy jam. This is a saxophone. You can use whatever you like. I would love to hear whatever you're using. Make your own decisions. You're adults. Let's add some drums in. Fun! Patreon members, you can download this entire project, including this whole rack, including all of the 46 samples. Non-Patreon members, that Friday Night Jam is available if you want to recreate what I did exactly. Please share with me what you're doing, what you're using, how you're doing this stuff. Till next time!